6 extinct animals that might still be alive. Part 4. Science declares an animal extinct when it has no evidence that it still exists, not when it has evidence that it doesn't. That distinction matters more than it might seem, because absence of evidence, no confirmed sightings, no photographs, no specimens, is not the same as evidence of absence. The world is large, its forests are dense, its mountains are remote, and the animals that once lived there knew how to disappear long before humans invented the concept of extinction. Tonight, 6 animals that science has officially declared gone. 6 species with confirmed extinction dates, official records, and closed files, and 6 reasons to wonder if the files were closed too soon. Animal number 1. The Zanzibar leopard. On the island of Zanzibar, off the coast of Tanzania, there was once a leopard. Not a mainland leopard, a distinct subspecies, Panthera pardus adersi, smaller and more slender than its continental relatives, adapted specifically to the forests and scrublands of the island. It was real. It was documented. It was also, for most of the 20th century, systematically hunted. The local communities of Zanzibar developed a belief that the leopards were kept and sent out by witches to attack people and livestock, a belief that the post-independence government of Zanzibar formalized into policy in the 1960s, organizing official eradication campaigns that paid hunters for leopard skins and body parts. By the 1990s, the Zanzibar leopard was considered functionally extinct. By 1996, it was officially declared gone. Then, in 2018, a camera trap set by researchers from the Wildlife Conservation Society in the Jozani Chwaka Bay National Park captured footage of a large cat moving through the forest at night. The footage was brief, partially obscured, and not of sufficient quality for definitive identification. But the researchers who analyzed it described it as consistent with a leopard and inconsistent with any other large cat species known to be present on Zanzibar. The footage was published cautiously, with appropriate scientific hedging, but it existed. Something was in that forest. Zanzibar's Jozani forest is small. The entire national park covers less than 10 square miles. But it is dense. Its undergrowth is nearly impenetrable in places, and leopards are among the most capable of all large cats at remaining undetected in areas with human presence. A small, remnant population, perhaps a single individual, perhaps a breeding pair, surviving in the most remote sections of Jozani, avoiding human contact with the precision that leopards are known for, would be detectable only by the most carefully placed and most patiently monitored camera traps. The 2018 footage may be exactly that detection, or it may be something else. The file on the Zanzibar leopard, officially closed in 1996, does not feel as closed as it once did. Animal number 2, the aurochs. The aurochs was the animal from which every domestic cow on earth descends. Every single one, from the Hereford to the Holstein, from the Angus to the Brahman, carries in its DNA the legacy of this animal. The auroch stood 6 feet at the shoulder. Its horns spanned over 3 feet. It weighed up to 300 pounds. It was, by every measure, one of the most imposing herbivores to walk Europe and Asia in the last 10,000 years, and it walked them alongside humans for the entire span of recorded history, depicted in cave paintings at Lascaux, with a precision and reverence that suggests the artist who painted it understood exactly what they were looking at. The last confirmed aurochs died in the Yaktara forest in Poland in 1627. A female. Her death was recorded. The date is known. The extinction is official and specific in a way that most extinctions are not. We know the year, we know the forest, we know it was the last one. And yet the aurochs story does not end in 1627, because the aurochs never entirely disappeared. It became something else. The domestic cattle that descended from it carry between 1% and 4% of aurochs DNA in surviving wild and feral populations, and in certain isolated populations of ancient cattle breeds in the British Isles, the Iberian Peninsula, and the forests of Central Europe, that percentage is significantly higher. Since the 1920s, multiple breeding programs have attempted to recreate the aurochs by selectively breeding cattle with the highest concentrations of aurochs genetic traits. The Heck cattle, developed by brothers Heinz and Lutz Heck in Germany, were the first attempt. More recently, the Toros program in the Netherlands has been using modern genomic analysis to guide breeding toward aurochs-like genetics with far greater precision than the Heck brothers could achieve. Animals produced by this program are now living in rewilded European forests. Animals that are not aurochs, but that carry more aurochs DNA than any animal alive since 1627. The aurochs is officially extinct. What is walking in the forests of Portugal and Romania right now is the closest thing to it that has existed in 400 years. Animal number 3, Schomburgk's deer. Schomburgk's deer, Rucervus schomburgki, was a large, striking deer native to the central plains of Thailand, with an extraordinary rack of antlers that branched so extensively that a mature male's headgear could span over 5 feet across. It lived in the floodplains and swamp forests of central Thailand, well adapted to the seasonal flooding that defined its habitat, swimming between feeding grounds during the wet season with an ease that impressed the European naturalists who first documented it in the 19th century. It was named after Sir Robert Schomburgk, the British consul in Bangkok, who described it in 1863. Within a century, it was gone. Habitat destruction, hunting for its spectacular antlers, and the conversion of its swamp forest habitat to rice paddies eliminated the species from the wild by the early 20th century. The last confirmed specimen, a captive animal at a temple in Bangkok, died in 1938. In 1991, a set of antlers was found in a traditional medicine shop in Laos. Antler velvet, the soft, vascular tissue that covers growing deer antlers, is used extensively in traditional Chinese and Southeast Asian medicine, and antlers of various deer species circulate through this trade constantly. But the antlers in that Laotian shop were identified by researchers as belonging to Schomburgk's deer, a species that had been officially extinct for over 50 years. The shop owner, when questioned, said he had obtained them recently from a hunter who had taken the animal in the forests of Laos. The identification of the antlers was subsequently disputed. Some researchers argued they could have been old stock, predating the extinction, circulating through the traditional medicine trade for decades. Others found the shop owner's account credible and the antlers' condition inconsistent with 50-year-old material. No follow-up expedition to the forests of Laos produced a confirmed specimen. But the forests of Laos, particularly the remote Annamite mountains that form the border with Vietnam, have produced genuine zoological surprises within living memory. The Sayola was found there. New species of deer have been described from those forests within the last 30 years. Whether Schomburgk's deer is among the things still living in that landscape is a question that has not been answered with the certainty the official record claims. Animal number 4, the Pyrenean ibex. The Pyrenean ibex, Capra pyrenaica, also called the bucardo, has the distinction of being the only animal in history to have gone extinct twice. The first extinction occurred on January 6, 2000, when the last known individual, a female named Celia, was found dead in the Ordesa National Park in northern Spain, killed by a fallen tree. Her death was recorded, her extinction was documented, and scientists who had been tracking her for years were ready because they had taken tissue samples from her ear while she was alive and stored them in liquid nitrogen against exactly this possibility. In 2003, a team of Spanish and French researchers used those stored cells to clone Celia. The technique, somatic cell nuclear transfer, the same method used to clone Dolly the sheep, produced a viable embryo that was implanted into a domestic goat surrogate. On July 30, 2003, a bucardo was born, the first animal to be brought back from extinction. It lived for 7 minutes before dying of a lung defect unrelated to the cloning process. The Pyrenean ibex went extinct for the second time on the same day it was resurrected. The research didn't stop. The stored tissue from cilia remains in liquid nitrogen in Spanish biobanks. The cloning technology has advanced significantly since 2003. The lung defect that killed the 2003 clone is now understood and potentially correctable. Multiple research groups have expressed interest in a second attempt, with better techniques and better surrogate candidates. The bucardo has been officially extinct since 2000, but its DNA is alive, preserved at 196 degrees Celsius in a laboratory in Spain, waiting for the technology to improve enough to use it successfully. The question of whether the Pyrenean ibex is truly gone depends on what you consider gone. Its last individual died in 2000. Its genetic information did not. Animal number 5. The quagga. The quagga looks at first glance like a compromise between a zebra and a horse, striped on its front half, plain brown on its rear, with a coat that fades from bold black and white at the head to a uniform tan at the hindquarters. It was native to the Karoo and southern grasslands of South Africa, grazing in herds alongside wildebeest and springbok in the open landscapes that European settlers found when they arrived at the Cape. Those settlers hunted it with extraordinary efficiency, for its meat, for its hide, for the sport of it, and because it competed with livestock for grazing. The last wild quagga was shot in 1878. The last captive individual, a mare at the Artis Zoo in Amsterdam, died on August 12, 1883. Her death went unrecorded at the time because the zoo staff didn't realize she was the last one. They assumed more could be obtained. There were no more. The quagga's story took an extraordinary turn in 1984, when it became the first extinct animal to have its DNA extracted and analyzed. The analysis revealed something that changed the scientific understanding of the quagga entirely. It was not a separate species. It was a subspecies of the plains zebra, Equus quagga quagga, distinguished from other zebra populations by a genetic variation that reduced the expression of striping on the rear portion of its body. The quagga was a zebra that had, through generations of isolated breeding in the southern African grasslands, gradually lost its stripes from the back forward. This discovery launched the Quagga Project in South Africa, a selective breeding program that has been, since 1987, identifying plains zebras with reduced rear striping and breeding them selectively to reconstruct the quagga's appearance. The project has now produced multiple generations of animals with coats indistinguishable from historical quagga specimens. These animals, called Ruquil quaggas after the project farm, are not true quaggas, but they carry the same genetic variants that produced the quagga's distinctive appearance, expressed in living animals grazing on South African grassland for the first time in over a century. The quagga is officially extinct, something that looks exactly like it is alive in the Karoo right now. Animal number 6, the Labrador duck. The Labrador duck holds an uncomfortable distinction in the history of North American wildlife. It is the only bird species in the continent's recorded history to have gone extinct without anyone noticing until it was already gone. No campaign was mounted to save it. No last individual was tracked and mourned. No date of final extinction is known. It simply stopped appearing. In the markets of New York and Boston, where it had been sold as a game bird, in the coastal waters of the northeastern seaboard where it had wintered, in the records of hunters and naturalists who had noted it unremarkably for decades. And by the time anyone realized it was gone, it had been gone for years. The last confirmed Labrador duck was shot near Long Island, New York, in 1875. Before that, the species had never been common. Even at its most numerous, hunters described it as scarce, appearing in small numbers along the Atlantic coast in winter and then vanishing northward to breed in a location that no ornithologist ever confirmed. No naturalist ever found a Labrador duck nest. No one ever documented its breeding grounds. The bird spent half its life in a place that science never found, and then it disappeared from the half of its life that was observable and the unobserved half went with it. Here's what makes the Labrador duck's case genuinely strange. We don't know why it went extinct. The species was never heavily hunted. It was considered poor eating, with a flesh described as tasting of fish and marsh, and it never appeared in the markets in the quantities that drove other waterfowl to the edge. Its habitat was not dramatically altered before its disappearance. No disease outbreak was recorded. It simply stopped being seen along a coastline that was more carefully observed than almost any other in North America at the time. The breeding grounds it vanished to every spring were never located. Whether those grounds still exist, whether any remnant of the species persisted in a location that no 19th century naturalist ever reached, is a question that cannot be answered because the question itself was never properly formed before the bird was gone. 6 animals, 6 official extinctions, and 6 cases where the evidence for absence is thinner than the official record suggests. Science declares extinction based on what it can confirm. What it cannot confirm, the remote valley no survey team has reached, the forest no camera trap has covered, the mountain no researcher has climbed since the last confirmed sighting, remains open. It always remains open. The next video is already waiting. Don't go anywhere.